Thank you very much. Muy buenos días. Es un placer y un honor estar aquí con ustedes esta mañana. Quiero dar las gracias al miembro del Cabildo, el regidor Adams, Mayor Pro Tem Adams. Thank you for introducing me, helping to organize this and bring all these amazing people together here. I understand that Representative Steckman is here as well. Thank you for joining us. And Senator Reagan, thank you for joining us. Very, very grateful. Grateful for the service that each of you provide to this community. And thank you all for taking some time to welcome a stranger from far west Texas, and to give me a chance to introduce myself, and more importantly, to have a chance to listen to you, to hear what's on your minds, to answer your questions, to be guided by your experience and your expertise on the issues that matter most to you. And to Fat Hill Brewing, thank you for organizing and hosting and allowing us to join you. And for those of you enjoying a beer this early in the morning, no judgment from me. Salute and celebrate your ability to do that. Just make sure you do it responsibly and that you tip generously, and then we're all good. Thanks again for hosting us out. My name is Beto O'Rourke. I'm from El Paso, Texas, which with Ciudad Juarez forms the largest binational community in the Western Hemisphere. There are about 3 million of us speaking 2 languages from 2 countries, 2 histories, 2 cultures, joined, not separated by the Rio Grande River, forming something far greater and more powerful than the sum of our parts or the number of people who are there. El Paso, Texas, where Amy and I are raising Ulysses and Molly and Henry, who are 12, 10, and 8 years old, is one of the safest cities in the United States of America, and it has been for the last 20 years running. And that is not despite the fact that a quarter of those with whom we live were born in another country, somewhere else, left their family, their customs, their country, their language to start again, strangers in a strange land to do better for themselves and for their kids, that's for sure, but to do better for all of us, and they have. I'd argue it is their very presence in our community that has made us successful and strong, and yes, also safe. I bring you greetings from the desert Southwest, the great Chihuahuan Desert, the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, our base elevation, 4,000 feet, one of the most beautiful places that you will find on the face of the planet. And the answer to so much of the hatred and the racism and the intolerance and the fear and the smallness that defines the national conversation about who we are as a country, what we mean to ourselves and to our kids, and what we represent to the rest of the world. In El Paso, Texas, we do not just respect or tolerate our differences, we embrace them. We understand that it has made us stronger. We acknowledge that there are some Americans who can trace their family lineage back 10,000 years. Their ancestors crossing the Bering Strait to settle where we are right now in Mason City, Iowa, or my hometown of El Paso, Texas. There were others who were brought in the hold of a slave ship, kidnapped from their families in the countries of West Africa to literally build the wealth of this country on their backs, so they had no prospect of sharing in it. Others, like the O'Rourkes, who fled famine in Ireland, famine that claimed the lives of more than 1 million people on that island, to find a home in the one place on this planet that would accept us and allow us to contribute our best of our potential. Or those who are showing up right now in my hometown of El Paso, who have just completed a 2,000-mile journey from Honduras or Guatemala or El Salvador, 3 of the deadliest places on the planet today, doing what any mother or father faced with the same choice would do, doing what Amy and I would do if it were the only way to save the lives of our kids, making that journey on foot, sometimes, if they're lucky, atop, but not inside of a train known as the Beast or La Bestia, showing up to this land of asylum seekers and refugees and immigrants as so many generations before them have done, and the way that we have met them, and the way that we continue to meet them, will define us forever. Putting that child in a cage, deporting that mother who risked her very life to bring this child here in the first place, back to the very country from which she fled, separating them, that child, God literally only knows where she is at this moment, enduring a torture and a cruelty that I only hope that our kids can only imagine, because they should never experience this themselves. When they are lucky enough to be reunited, which does not happen in every case, and I've been at some of those reunions facilitated by the Catholic charity Annunciation House in El Paso, there are no tears of joy streaking down that kid's face. There's no big smile like the one that I see on Henry's face when I've been gone for a few weeks, and he's so impatient to see me and to be with me and to hug me and to tell me everything that he's just experienced. There's nothing at all on that child's face, because she associates her mother with the most devastating pain and suffering that a human can possibly endure. And she will not open her heart up to that person, to that kind of pain or suffering again. That is what this country is doing right now in your name and in mine. And not a single one of us can take any comfort in knowing that one man, Donald Trump, ordered this to happen, that he comes from one party, the Republican Party. For as long as we are a democracy, and the people are the government, and the government is the people, this is on every single one of us to make it right. This is our defining moment of truth, our opportunity to live up to our potential and to fulfill our promise as a country. And we cannot be found wanting. Every single challenge that we face, I am confident, is an opportunity to bring this country together. Those of us who agree with one another right now, those of us who might be sitting at the end of the bar and disagree with us right now. This is our opportunity to find the common ground, to see the common cause, to pursue the common good. Yesterday, we saw yet another school shooting in the United States of America. Grievously injured 7, took the life of 1 child. The day before that, we were in Newton, Iowa, at Berg Middle School, talking to a group of 14-year-olds in the 8th grade. And one of them, a young woman, a girl named Milan, stood up and said, "I don't want to have to think about going to school and not being able to come back home from school." And you could tell through her tears and the way that she asked the question that this is something that weighs so heavily on her mind, and it's something that she has come to expect, because this is something that we have come to tolerate in our country. The shooting death of a young man, Riley Howell, who ran towards the gunfire at UNC Charlotte. Maybe that was something that he had already thought through before that shooter walked into his school, thinking about what he would do if that happened. I think about that because when there was a high school shooting in Texas at Santa Fe High School, and after kids were murdered, defenseless against somebody who came there to kill them, where they were supposed to learn and be with one another and enjoy perhaps their last days of innocence. And this reporter puts a microphone in front of that girl's face who had just survived the slaughter and says, "Were you surprised? Did it shock you that someone came in and did this?" And she said, "No, I expected it would happen sooner or later." That 8-year-old son of mine, Henry, last year came home from school, and when Amy and I asked him what he had done that day in May of 2018, he told me that his first grade teacher had huddled Henry and his classmates into a closet, participating in an active shooter drill to prepare for what may very well be inevitable in his school, in your kid's school, in your grandkids' school, unless we are willing to change course right now. There are more than 30,000 gun deaths in this country every single year, and no other country on the face of the planet even comes close.
So there is something either inherently evil or violent about our fellow Americans, or this is a human-caused problem with a human solution. If we're willing to defy the polls and perhaps our prospects in the next election, the NRA, the political action committees, the gun lobby, and do the right thing for our kids and the generations that will follow them, adopt universal background checks in every single part of this country, which have been shown to save lives where they've been adopted. If we are willing to stand up and demand that we stop selling weapons that were designed and engineered and originally sold to the United States military for the express purpose of killing people as effectively, as efficiently, in as great a number as possible, keep them on the battlefields, but don't sell them into our communities where they end up in our schools, in our synagogues, in our churches, and in our public life. If we will adopt red flag laws, not community by community, state by state, but across this country, so if someone exhibits a tendency to harm themselves or to harm someone else in their lives, someone else in your life, that we make sure that we act before it is too late. We can decide that we will come together, not as Democrats, not as Republicans, but as Americans first, to do the right thing. We are capable of that. I believe in us, but it is now our moment to do this. When we look at the other challenges that we have in this country, tens of millions who cannot see a doctor, afford medication, take their child to a therapist so that she's well enough to learn at school the next day. We all know that we do not lack for resources as the wealthiest, the most powerful country on the face of the planet today. All that we lack is this ability to come together at this divided moment and find the political will to do the right thing, guaranteed, high quality, universal care for every child, every man, every woman in this country. If we decide to do it, we will do it. On immigration, knowing that there are more than 1 million young people, we call them dreamers, just as American as anyone else in this room in any way that matters to you or to I. But because they were brought here from another country, because they do not have citizenship, they live in constant fear of deportation back to a country whose language they may no longer speak, where they may no longer have family, where if we do send them there and they are successful against those long odds, their success will accrue and benefit that place, not Mason City, not Iowa, not the United States of America. An historic opportunity to come together as Americans, rural communities and big cities as well, to rewrite our laws in our own image, to reflect the strength of a country unique amongst the nations of the world that is defined not by race and not by ethnicity and not by common genealogy, but by an idea that we are all created equal, that has stood the test of 243 years, that seeks to bring out the very best in people regardless of where they come from, to whom they pray, whoever they love, however many generations they've been here, or if they just arrived this morning. If we make those dreamers U.S. citizens, bring their parents and siblings out of the shadows, those in this state working some of the toughest jobs in the meatpacking industry, for example, in agriculture, in farming, who live under the shadow of deportation, who are paid a minimum wage if they are lucky, and sometimes something well below that, held in some kind of modern day bondage with the leverage of their status used against them. Imagine what they in this country could do if they're able to contribute to their full potential. Comprehensive immigration reform is a goal that we can meet if we decide that we will come together as a country and achieve it. The last great big opportunity that I will leave you with. We know now, beyond the shadow of a doubt, especially those of us who still believe scientists and science and facts and the truth. And by the way, if you're one of those who marched for science 300 years after the Enlightenment because you knew you had to. Thank you and God bless you. But those scientists tell us that this planet has warmed 1 degree Celsius just since 1980. That warming caused not by God, nor by Mother Nature, but by us, by you and by me. Our emissions, our excesses, our inaction in the face of those facts and that science has led to the floods that we've seen on either side of this state. Having just been in Pacific Junction, where literally every single home was underwater and everything within those homes was destroyed forever. Visiting farms just outside of Pacific Junction that are lakes today. The stored grain, including soybeans, soaking up that water and bursting the sides of the sheds in which they were contained. Davenport, seeing flood levels that exceeded the record set in 1993. In my home state of Texas, Houston saw 58 inches of rain fall from the sky in a single storm, which is the landfall record for as long as we've been keeping them in North America. And we were just in the Central Valley of California, record-breaking droughts that preceded infestations of beetles, that created trees that became tinder, that led to the greatest wildfires that we have ever seen for as long as we've been watching and fighting wildfires in California. The droughts, the floods, the fires, the devastation, the loss of property, and human life is incontrovertible proof that climate change is here, that is happening to us, and those same scientists tell us that on this current trajectory, the destruction and devastation and death will become exponentially worse, borne disproportionately, not by those of us who are here, but by our kids and our grandkids and every generation that succeeds them. Imagine our kids and grandkids in the year 2050. I'm 46 years old right now. My oldest, Ulysses, will be 42. He will not even yet be my age. He will be looking back on us at this moment here in Mason City in 2019, and he will know that we had all the facts before us. He will also know that the scientists gave us a decade, 10 years within which to act. I want to make sure that when he looks back on us, it is not with disappointment, but with pride. He sees this country come together, defying party or geography or any other difference, to free ourselves from a dependence on fossil fuels, to invest in renewable energy, to follow the lead of farmers, to put them in the driver's seat, to allow them to make a profit, planting cover crops, or opening up new technologies like precision tilling or no-till farming, paying them for the public service and the public good that they are providing, a massive investment in the next generation of technologies, including the ability to store the renewable energy, to distribute it back out onto the grid when the wind is not blowing and the sun is not shining, and to help take our rightful role on the world stage to convene the other powers of the planet to do their part and to prevent this globe from warming 2 degrees Celsius total, after which it is really hard for us to get it back for those kids and grandkids who will follow us now. There is no way to do that by half measure or in half steps or with only half the country. This cannot be a proposal of the Democratic Party or of one candidate, nor only the mission of one person as president. No matter how capable she or he may be, it is going to take all of us in this country coming together. That's the reason that I'm here, not back home in El Paso with Amy and Ulysses and Molly and Henry right now. I know that this is our defining moment of truth, and I also know that we can come together. As a member of Congress for 6 years in the minority, every single success that I was a part of because I could find the common ground with my Republican colleagues who are in the majority. To expand mental health care access for veterans who had placed their lives on the line for this country, we had to find consensus. We had to compromise, though that is a 4-letter word in Washington, D.C. right now. And we had to get it across the desk of a gentleman with whom I agree on almost nothing, Donald J. Trump, but whose help I needed in order to be able to get this done. Campaigning in Texas, We went to each one of the 254 counties in that state. The bluest of places, we didn't take them for granted. We showed up to find out what was on the minds of those in the Rio Grande Valley, in Houston, in Austin, and Dallas. In the reddest of places, not in Texas, but in this country. Those places you can see glowing red from outer space as you orbit the planet Earth. We showed up there as well, going to places like Archer City, which had not seen a candidate for Senate show up in 70 years, since Congressman Lyndon Baines Johnson dropped out of the sky in his helicopter, landed on the courthouse grounds, walked over to the American Legion Hall, and asked those whom he hoped to serve what was on their minds before he asked for their votes. We went everywhere, wrote nobody off, took nobody for granted, and never trimmed our sails. Showed up with the courage of our convictions, talking about gun violence, a woman's ability to make her own decisions about her own body, universal health care, comprehensive immigration reform, an economy that works for every single one of us, because people will be paid a living wage if we are successful. And though we did not win, we came up 2.6% short. We won more votes than any Democrat in the history of the state of Texas. We helped 2 new members of Congress win their seats. Helping to flip the House of Representatives and produce a Democratic majority, which, by the way, just passed in the House, universal background checks to address one of these issues that we must make progress on. Helped to change the composition of the state legislature. Helped 17 African-American women win judicial positions in Harris County, literally changing the face of criminal justice in the most diverse county in the United States of America. Won independence for the first time in a decade, and 500,000 Republicans who voted for a very conservative, Trump-loving Tea Party governor also voted for us on the same ballot. And the kicker is, my mom, a lifelong Republican, also voted for us in the 2018 election. So we know that there's a way to bring people together around these common goals, finding the common cause to do the common good. That is why I'm here today. I'm looking forward to learning from you after I have a chance to listen to you, and then I'll ask for your help and support and being one of those who will caucus for us as I seek to become the next president of the United States of America. Thank you all for having us out today. Very grateful. You got the mic? Cynthia Cano's got a microphone.
Here we go.
You might drink there first. Real quick, do you support unions? And obviously the state has a number of unions. And if so, would you have a problem at all with your own organizers unionizing under you with a local union here in our state?
Yes. Thank you for the questions. Do I support unions? Yes. Would I have a problem with our team organizing? No, I would not have a problem. Encourage them to do that if that is what they want to do. I'll tell you, I've learned from listening to people in Iowa about not just the power of unions, but how it weakens a state when unions are no longer powerful. After 2017 and public employees no longer being able to organize and to collectively bargain, talking to school teachers and public school educators who cannot afford to pursue their calling and their passion without having to work a second or a third job, so many of them are leaving the profession or are leaving the state. Minnesota just got a windfall in calculus teachers and literature teachers and mathematics teachers. A state where you can organize, where unions are valued. That's gaining the talent that you paid for, invested in, trained, and is now providing benefit somewhere else. I read an article yesterday about Iowa's economy and the growth here in this state being revised downward because we are creating more jobs in Iowa than we have trained Iowans to work them. Now, not only is that a breakdown in higher education, and we should make community college free for every single American so that we have the skills and the training to be able to work those professions, but unions play a huge role in making sure that at no cost to the member. They're able to join or enter an apprenticeship, learn that trade or that craft or that skill to plug into that high value, high wage job opportunity that's being created in this state and command a living wage for the rest of their lives. So the power of unions is not just great for the members of those unions, it's great for this state and for our economy as a whole. So yes, let's get behind unions and help them to be strong. Thank you.
Okay, in the middle of the room, straight back.
If you look around the room, you see that a good percentage of this is senior citizens. My question is basically, Trump is doing all he can to tear up Social Security and Medicare and all health programs, whether it's VA or, Obamacare or whatever. How do you stand on these programs?
Thank you for asking the question. When I was a member of Congress, I co-sponsored a bill called the Social Security 2100 Act. That was precipitated by finally understanding that along this current trajectory, Social Security will no longer be able to pay out 100 cents on the dollar of obligation as soon as the 2030s. So that means that Americans who every single working day of their lives paid in to the Social Security Trust Fund, earned that benefit, will not be able to receive it or count on it when they are ready to retire. So we introduced a bill that funds that program well into the next century by lifting the arbitrary cap on income that is taxed for Social Security. Right now it's at $129,000. Let's lift that so that the additional dollars, millions of dollars, billions of dollars in income that you have are taxed to make that fund sustainable for the long term, forever going forward. On Medicare and Medicaid, again, an object lesson here in Iowa. You all, present company excluded, but the Republican leadership privatized Medicaid in this state. And listening to healthcare providers, from EMS technicians to physician's assistants to doctors to hospital administrators, they're having a really hard time making it in much the same way that you are losing public school educators and teachers right now to other states. You're going to start losing healthcare professionals to other states. I was talking to the hospital administrator in a part of southwest Iowa, rural community, and it almost seemed like it was going to be a matter of days before he shuts the doors. The reimbursement rates have gone through the floor. He's in the red. He will not be able to make it for long. So when we talk about guaranteed, high quality, universal health care, we're not talking about a state-by-state experiment. When we have experiments that have gone terribly awry, like they have here in Iowa, or experiments not even begun, like my home state of Texas, where we refuse to expand Medicaid altogether, leaving millions of my fellow Texans out in the cold. It has to be guaranteed for every single American. That means the ability to afford prescription medication that today is out of reach for so many, the ability to see a primary care provider, the ability to go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a therapist. In some states like mine, the largest provider of mental health care services is the county jail system. In Texas, the largest inpatient mental health care facility is the Harris County Jail. And not only do we see people with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder literally getting locked up on purpose all too often because it's the one place that they are guaranteed care, it costs the taxpayer $110 a night to keep that person locked up. For a fraction of the cost, we can provide consistent, contiguous, world-class outpatient mental health care to that person. In Texas, again, and we see signs of this in Iowa, we're in the midst of a maternal mortality crisis, 3 times as deadly for women of color. It is the same state that has closed down so many of its family planning clinics that not only can women not get access to a safe, legal abortion, they cannot get access to a cervical cancer screening that could save their lives, see a family planning provider, to see a provider of any kind. So universal health care means primary health care, mental health care, and it means that every single woman makes her own decisions about her own body and has access to the care to allow her to do that. So we've got to fund these programs. And then you asked about the VA.
Yeah.
Today in the VA, thank you, sir, for your service. You may know this, there are 45,000 unfilled clinical positions in the VA. 45,000. Wait times all too often are not measured in minutes or hours, but months and years. We have an epidemic of veteran suicide. 20 a day is a conservative estimate from the VA every single day. And 16 of those 20 were unable, or for whatever reason, unwilling to go to the VA to get the care that could save their lives. How about this? Not only do we refuse President Trump's attempt to privatize the VA, which would exacerbate that problem, but if you're graduating from one of these universities here in Iowa, if you're carrying $40 or $80 or $120,000 in student loan debt on your back right now, and you want to fill one of those 45,000 positions, what if we wiped clean and clear your debt for serving those who have stood up and put their lives on the line for this country? Thank you for the question.
We're at the same table.
Hello, I have a brief question. I endorse your comments on the environment and climate change, but I have a question on the environment, particularly for small to medium-sized farms here in Iowa. The loss of topsoil, the erosion, the increase in farmer suicides, and manufacturing farms.
Thank you for raising this. We know from living in Texas, from our travels in Iowa and in Wisconsin, a state that is losing close to 2 dairy farms a day, every single day, that it's really tough right now, almost impossible in many cases to make a profit, made even worse under trade wars that are punishing the farmers and growers and exporters of this state, perhaps more than any other state in the union. And the consequence sometimes is absolutely tragic, as you just described. So how do we address this? By listening to farmers, what they have told me is that all they are asking for is the ability to make a profit, to grow what sustains us, what feeds not just America, but the world. In West Texas, close to where I'm from, to grow the fibers that clothe not just this country, but so much of the world. And in Iowa, to grow what fuels so much of this country, relieving us at least 10% of our dependence on gasoline and fossil fuels. You have shown us more than 40 years and counting that if we put farmers in the lead, this country will benefit. And so you mentioned the land management and soil and water practices and consequences of our current farming practices in this state and in this country today. They're a result of the farmer's need to be able to make a profit, not much of one, and the desire to be able to pass that farm on to her daughters or her sons, to the next generation, instead of having it subdivided into homes and blacktops and strip malls. What if in the Farm Bill we allowed the farmer to make a profit by encouraging more crop rotation, combine some small grains in with the soybeans and with the corn? What if we paid the farmer to not cultivate every single acre under their ownership and allow that land in conservation easement to draw more of that carbon out of the soil? What if we paid the farmer at a profit to plant cover crops? So not cost sharing, not practice-based mandates from the federal government, but performance-based measures to which I know the farmer can perform to in this state. Let's put the farmer back in the driver's seat. And not only will we begin to see more out of those farmers for the public good that they can do when it comes to climate change, they will still be able to grow the food and fiber upon which we depend in a much more environmentally conscious way. We just need to give them the opportunity to do that. Thanks for asking the question.
We're all the way on the right side to your right. There we go.
Hello. Hey there. According According to Johns Hopkins University, medical errors are the third leading cause of death in our country. However, it doesn't show up on the CDC top 10 list causes of death. This is one of the darkest secrets kept in our country. I've been the victim of medical malpractice myself. Mayo Clinic dropped me in surgery and broke my neck. Denied me medical care. I've been refused treatment at every medical facility I went to. I've been literally going across the country. I have a breathing tube sitting in my chest that they left in there from the lung that they collapsed. This is a significant problem in our country. Nobody talks about it in the news. I'm trying to bring awareness to everybody what's going on. So I don't even know if you're aware of this, but you can look up the study on Johns Hopkins University. It's the third leading cause of death, but it doesn't show up on the CDC top 10 list causes of death. And I have a breathing tube in my chest. I have 2 sets of genitals in my x-rays. They can stack all the new images to manipulate the image because they shattered basically my body. When they did this, they dropped me in such a severe, unorthodox way that it shattered my spine, both my hips, and my neck. You can visually see my broken neck. It's so severe. I go to doctors. I was actually out in Washington, D.C. I got the images from Georgetown University Hospital right on my iPad here if anybody wants to see them. So I'm just trying to raise awareness, like I said. Thank you.
Thank you very much for saying that. This is why we have town hall meetings. I didn't know about this. I didn't know that it was the third leading cause. Did you say of fatalities or injuries?
Third leading cause of death.
Of death, of fatalities. Yep. Thank you for sharing that with me, and also thank you for having the courage of sharing your story to help make the point to us. One initial thought is this is why we got to make sure that our institutions of accountability, including our courts, work so that there is real consequence and real justice when something like this happens. Not only is that better for the person who has been wronged, I think it sends the message to other providers that there's accountability if they make mistakes, which hopefully is a forcing motive to ensure that they take into account the best possible practices so that no one ever has to endure what you just did. I'm going to ask our team, either Norm or Cynthia, to get your contact information because you're bringing this to light for me. You may also have some of the solutions to the challenge that you just posed, and I'd love to learn them directly from you. So thank you for being here. Appreciate that.
Here's our next question.
Hi, I'm Katie Kaler, and I recently retired as a teacher here in Mason City. And I am, if anybody has ever heard me talk, I am a pro-public school person. We educate the majority of the population in the United States. And what is happening in our state is a travesty. We are underfunded, as a lot of the nation is. Our current governor has, and I'm glad they're starting to address mental well-being of children, which is good. But the current law now is there's no funding behind it. And we do know there is a crisis in public education. We see it visually on TV all the time. Teachers are protesting to improve the lives of their children. And I would really like it if some person would address public education first when they speak. I think it would be wonderful. My question to you is, as a president of the United States, how would you help to improve it? Because currently, from what I'm understanding, is vouchers and our public money is going to more private places because people need choice. There is choice in the United States already, and there is a strong constitutional thing where you have separation of church and state. And so I would like you to address how you would improve our situation.
Thank you. And thank you for your commitment to public service, which continues in your advocacy right now at this town hall. So I mentioned going to every one of the 254 counties of Texas and going to some of the most conservative places on the planet. And I remember being at Stewart's Sweet Shop in Henrietta, very red, very Republican. A family noticed me, had seen me on the news from our Wichita Falls town hall the night before, asked me to sit down, and we talked about a number of issues that have come up here today. A family whose vote, I don't know if I had any hope of winning, but from whom I wanted to learn. And I remember the father of the family was talking about healthcare, really did not like Obamacare, but said, before you replace this or repeal it, make sure that we have something better, because before Obamacare, I didn't have health insurance. I thought that was very telling. And before I could respond,
His wife, who is a public school teacher and a Republican, says, Beto, if you let Betsy DeVos take my own hard-earned tax dollars out of my public school classroom, away from those kids for whom I've already sacrificed so much, mark my words, I will hunt you down, and I will find you, and I will get you. And it brought home to me that when we show up for one another, we may surprise ourselves that we're on the same page on the issues that we care most about. What that teacher was reflecting, and what you are so passionate about, is our public school educators, our instructors, our counselors, our librarians, our therapists, our school bus drivers, our cafeteria workers, our custodians, are sacrificing so much already for those kids in the classroom. Not only have they dedicated their lives to those kids, in Texas, despite the fact that on average, public school educators will work an additional 1 or 2 jobs on top of the one that they have with the independent school district because their pay is so low. They, out of their own pocket, on average, take out nearly $1,000 a year, not just to pay for decorations in the classroom or school supplies for the kid who forgot them, but for that child on free and reduced breakfast and lunch who does not have a dinner waiting for her at home. It's very often the school teacher who pays for that as well, though she doesn't have enough to make ends meet in her home. That child who shows up in the same pair of jeans and t-shirt Monday through Thursday, Friday, that teacher out of her own pocket has bought a new set of clothes, knowing that that child's ability to learn is connected with his own sense of self-worth and dignity, and she's going to make sure that he has every shot in the world to succeed. We mentioned gun violence and the fact that in addition to all of this, these teachers now have to contemplate putting themselves between an active shooter and that kid for whom they've already given so much. Yesterday, we had a chance to meet with Melissa from the ISEA, and she was talking about these complete schools where kids who come in who may be of mixed status immigration families, may be earning too much to enroll in Medicaid but not enough to afford private insurance, get mental health care and primary health care, as well as that free and reduced breakfast when they show up at school, helping those teachers to be okay. We learn about school districts in other parts of the country where teachers are able to organize because we value labor, who are able to command a true living wage and are able to focus on just that child and unlocking her lifelong love of learning, after which there's no stopping that kid and there's no beating this country. So you ask what we can do. We can ensure that we pay public school educators commensurate with their worth so that they just have one job, the most important job. We can make sure that we take care of their retirement. In Texas, the teachers' retirement system has not had a cost of living adjustment in 13 years. But the cost for those retired teachers on a fixed income have gone up every single year. We can make sure that their health care is affordable. We learned in Weatherford, Texas, of a school teacher who had insurance but didn't have the $119 in her checking account to pay for the copay on her flu medication and died of the flu. And we have teacher shortages in so many of these states. In South Carolina, where we just were, 1/4 of first-year teachers drop out of the profession, 50% within the first 5 years. How are we going to teach our kids going forward? So yes, will this cost some money for the federal government to make this investment in our educators? Absolutely. But it's going to produce a return far and above the initial investment. What if we drop down the first year of public school education from kindergarten at 4 or 5 years old to pre-K at 3 or 4 years old, so those kids are better prepared as they move up the grades? For every dollar we put into that program, we get $9 back. So listen, I'm going to join you in the fight, and I'm going to make the case that it's the right thing to do. But I'll also share with those who may be a little bit dubious or don't understand like we do. All 3 of our kids are in world-class public schools in El Paso. The value of public education, that for the American taxpayer, this is about the best investment we can make going forward. Thank you for asking the question. Really appreciate it.
To your left, and to your left.
Thank you. I have a question going back to your healthcare thoughts. I think it's pretty clear that accessibility and therefore quality is related to cost. If we have a limited budget. What are your thoughts about working with medical equipment companies, insurance companies, and particularly the pharmaceutical industry to bring under control some of the outrageous increases in costs that we've seen and continue to see?
I like that idea a lot. The status quo is almost inexplicable. You and I and every American taxpayer invest in the research and development that are foundational in coming up with the cures and medications that are then sold back to us at the highest prices on the planet today. We're not allowed to buy pharmaceuticals from other countries where we can get them less expensively. And bad actors in the pharmaceutical industry, like Purdue Pharma, that marketed opioids as a miracle non-addictive drug, though it turns out they knew something to the contrary, to prescribers and to doctors. Almost every single opioid overaddiction case began with a lawfully prescribed opioid. Not a single one of them has faced any meaningful justice or a night in jail, though we're locking up young women and men for possession of marijuana in this country, something to which you will not become addicted or die from, and is legal in most states in America today. How does this happen? How do we buy so many billions of dollars in pharmaceuticals for Medicare beneficiaries, Medicaid beneficiaries, TRICARE beneficiaries, VA beneficiaries, and yet not use that leverage to bring down the cost of those medications? I said it's almost inexplicable unless you follow the money. Those political action committees, the checks that they can write to buy access, influence, and ultimately outcomes within the committees of jurisdiction and the members of Congress help to explain what is going on in this country today. So if we end big, dark, unaccountable money in our politics, if we ensure that members of Congress cannot receive PAC contributions going forward, if we ourselves do not accept them, and we don't, and don't take help from lobbyists or corporations or special interests, we are then free to pursue good public policy that's to the benefit of the consumer and the taxpayer and not the pharmaceutical companies, and use our leverage to bring down the prices of prescription pharmaceuticals and the devices upon which so many Americans depend. And that is something that I'll do as your president. Thanks for asking the question.
We have time for two more.
Good morning. My name is Lisa. Our current president and our U.S. senators always state when they're out with their constituents, they never have questions posed to them about the Mueller investigation and the way AG Barr has handled the report. I want you to know we are very concerned about that. We are very distressed about it. We just have so many other concerns that it's hard to bring them all up. But I do want our senators and our president to know this is very high on our list.
Thank you. Thanks for saying that. And I love the way that you said it, that there are immediate pressing concerns. If you can't afford insulin and your very life depends on it, then you're going to be asking a question about how we make pharmaceuticals affordable to our fellow Americans. If you're a school teacher and can't get by on just one job, and your ability to feed your family rests on changing those policies, that's going to be top of mind for you. But we also all take into account the long view of this country. And 243 years after the Declaration of Independence declared that we are all created equal, and not too many years after that, we adopted the Constitution that says that we can freely choose our elected representatives to guide the course of this country. There's nothing that guarantees us another 243 years after this one, or even another year, unless we stand up for ourselves, for our rights, for this Constitution, and for this country. Not only did the President of the United States invite the involvement of a foreign power in our election. Read the Mueller report if you'd like to, or just watch the video of him asking Russia to find Hillary Clinton's emails. Not only did he fire the principal investigator into what happened in 2016, James Comey, the director of the FBI, who failed to pledge his fealty to the president, he also tweeted in broad daylight to his Attorney General Jeff Sessions to stop the Russia investigation. And then after the Mueller report lands, One of his first calls is to Vladimir Putin, with whom he's on the phone for an hour, and declares that investigation and its findings a hoax, despite the conclusion that Russia involved themselves, invaded our democracy, and will do so again unless there are real consequences and accountability. George Will, a conservative columnist, said, if you wonder whether there was collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, on that stage in Helsinki, Finland, where Donald Trump defended Vladimir Putin instead of believing our intelligence community, that, he said, was collusion in action. And now, the Attorney General refusing to testify to a co-equal branch of government that only seeks to find out what happened to the sanctity of the ballot box and to our very democracy that has stood the test of time all these many years. The president, who is now declaring the full Mueller report, will not be turned over to your representatives in Congress so that we know the full truth about what happened. This precipitates a constitutional crisis perhaps unlike any other that we have seen in the history of this country. And if we avert our eyes or don't talk about it because it is too politically difficult or inconvenient, we're not only giving the green light to Russia to continue to involve themselves in the 2020 elections and every cycle thereafter, we're also telling this president and whoever his successors might be that you can defy the law, and that some people, because of the position of public trust and power that they hold, are exempt from the Constitution and the laws of the land. That cannot stand. And we need to make sure that we follow these facts as far as they go and as high up as they lead. Thank you for asking the question.
This is our last comment.
Good morning, Congressman. Welcome to Northern Iowa. As everybody knows, they know what the Democratic Iowa Democratic Wingding is, and I know you have. We're the largest fundraiser in the state since Harkin State Fright has retired. So now, put your date, August 9th, on your date. We'd love to have you grace our stage at the Grand Surf Ballroom as one of our speakers. Right on. We'd love to have you. Thank you, sir.
Now that I have the T-shirt, it's hard to refuse the invitation. So let us Norm and Cynthia get you an answer sooner rather than later, so that you all can plan accordingly. We are grateful for the invitation. If there's any way that we can do it, we will be there. And as Cynthia has shared with me that was our last question, it's my turn and time to say thanks again to Fat Hill Brewing for hosting us here today, for Mayor Pro Tem Adams for getting us kicked off, and for each of you spending part of your Wednesday morning with us, asking some terrific questions and engaging in our democracy. I'm grateful for the opportunity. Thank you all. We'll see you next visit. Gracias y adios.